And I could EQ this without affecting the mid signal. Hey, what's up? This is Laidback Luke, DJ and producer, and in this vlog I was just so fed up of making beginner producer tutorials. So I'm happy you're here. I'm happy to be unleashing all of this advanced EQing on you. Granted, some of you are amazing producers and know all of this already, but who knows, I have some tips and tricks for you, so make sure to stay tuned. What I'm going to talk to you about today is dynamic EQing, EQ masking, linear phase, mid and side, EQing in key, and all the way on the end of this vlog, I have a special bonus trick for you that you'll probably enjoy. All right, without further ado, let's dive in. Before we go in, a shameless plug, because the track you'll be hearing today, the track where I will be explaining all of this on, is my new release with Sonnery James and Ryan Marciano and Ed Graves called Got Me Hypnotized. Make sure to check it out in the link below if you like what you're hearing. All right, dynamic EQ. This is a little bit of a mystery, and thanks to FabFilter Pro Q3, something that I love working with. So what it does is, if you look at the frequencies that are coming through in the track, and say if I do not want to have this peak right here, just this peak, what we could do obviously is just to EQ it down. But this means in the whole track, this frequency will be gone. But what if I would just want this to hit as it peaks? And that's where a dynamic EQ comes in. Well, the only thing you need to do is say you found this really nice curve, and the only thing I need to do now is double click here on the big knob, put this to 0, and then I'll go to the outer ring and I'll pull the outer ring down. So what it does now is whenever it detects this frequency hitting, it'll pull it down. And so whenever the track is running, the EQ is actually flat just until it peaks, and then it gives it a spike down. And you see how amazingly it's working over here. Linear phase EQ, the myth unraveled in this vlog. Linear phase EQ uses a different underlying technology to channel EQ that preserves the phase of the audio signal. So phase coherency is always maintained even when you apply extreme EQ curves to the sharpest signal transients. And now, because this is an advanced tutorial, I'm assuming you know what phase difficulties are. If you don't, you'd like to avoid phasing issues. It's that simple. And to do that, we simply put the 0 latency here on linear phase. And that's it. It's done. So whatever you EQ now, it's without phase. And granted, whenever you do it in the bass frequencies, it might just add some extra sonics to it. If you've made it this far in the vlog, I'm sure you are an advanced producer, and I actually don't need to sell you my bootlegs, edits, and mashup online producer course that I have with digital DJ tips. But if you're interested in DJing, and this is kind of like a crossover course, interested in making mashups really quick and that sort of thing, make sure to check it out. I'll leave a link down below. Some extra sonics. Sometimes if you listen closely, you can hear it almost whistle in the bass frequencies. And so in no way, shape or form I'm saying that a linear phase EQ is better than a regular EQ setting. Sometimes it's okay to have certain phasings going on, and it's just a natural way in EQ sounds. Sometimes linear phase EQing can sound a little bit unnatural, as what I explained before. Do note that it's heavier on your CPU, so you want to be mindful of that. And even in the Ableton EQ8, there's a sort of a linear phase setting, which is if you right click this triangle and turn on the oversampling, then all of a sudden this EQ functions similarly to a linear phase EQ. What you get when you turn the oversampling on is a higher quality EQ, so that's pretty cool. And what I personally use these settings for is if I am mastering my track, so on the master channel, or if I'm using multiple EQs, I tend to put the oversampling on or put the linear phase on just to make sure that I'm not getting crazy phasings in my signal. EQ masking. It's a fancy term of basically trying to emphasize certain signals in comparison to others. Say I have my chords, which are in a similar frequency as my vocals, but I want the vocals to stand out more. So what I'll do right now is go into the vocal channel and find out where the meat sits of the vocal EQ. So I'm slapping an EQ on there.
Look at the damage you have done. Your body is a pendulum.
Okay, that's some meat there, and maybe over here.
Look at the damage you have done.
Okay, so this is heavily over exaggerated, but so I'll take it a little bit back. Globally, very roughly, this is where the vocal EQ sits. Now I'm just going to cut this EQ away. And I'm going to go into my chord stem and I'll paste that EQ here. And what I'm going to do now is reverse this EQ. So I'm going to touch the scale and I'll reverse here. So all of the frequencies where the actual vocal sits, I'll cut away in the chords.
Look at the damage you have done. Your body is a pendulum.
All right, and so without.
Look at the damage you have done.
That's the essence of vocal masking. But with the FabFilter Pro Q, you can do some next level stuff in these type of realms. All right, what do you think? A look under the hood of advanced level EQing. Make sure to give me a like right now and do subscribe on my channel as well. And leave it in the comments if you enjoy these and if you want to see more. Okay, so we're going to grab a FabFilter Pro Q3 and we're going to drop it into the Chords EQ channel. And the Pro Q3 is beautiful because in the analyzer, we're just going to select our vocal main ACA. So that's the vocal channel, right? And now you will see the vocal and the chord at the same time in the same spectrum.
Look at the damage you have done. Your body is a...
So you'll see on the red parts that it has a certain overlap. And when it does, we can actually emphasize it or pull it down, whatever you want.
Look at the damage you have done. Your body is a pendulum. Look at the damage you have done. Your body is a pendulum. Look at the damage.
And so in this case, the red signal is the vocal signal and the white signal is your chords. And so from there, you can EQ and mask in there. EQing in key. Keys, obviously notes, are frequencies as well. Whenever we're EQing, sometimes we try and EQ out the sharp and hurtful frequencies. And what these usually are the frequencies in the track that are really off key, that have a lot of resonance. But sometimes when you want to beef your track up, it's a possibility to emphasize the actual frequencies or the key or the notes that your track is in. And what does that mean? Let's dive back into the track. We're on the master channel, and what we'll do is we'll just click this little keyboard. Let's make this a larger size so we can see the keyboard a little bit better. Now my track I know has a ground note in G. So that means all of the frequencies in here, the G's, can be emphasized. When I hover on this note, I can just double click here and it'll give me a little dot. So on here as well, the G2 and the G1, which is a really low note. Let's have a listen, and maybe one in G4 as well. Okay, let's have a listen how this sounds in the track. That's a resonance that is on key indeed. A little bit muddy there. I don't know necessarily if I want that. This should be relatively good for like the upper bass. Ooh, nice. It gives a little emphasis on the kick drum as well. The really low G here. Also a nice effect. And now you also know that, for instance, the keys that would be really off key, say it's like a G sharp, which is the exact note next to the G, could be really off key, but we could also look out for like a C sharp or something like that. I don't know if you hear that, but there's quite the resonance going on. And so if anything, you can pull this back a little and it will not hurt. Actually, it'll clean your track up a little bit. Make sure you stay tuned because I still have that bonus trick to come, which you will absolutely love. Old Faithful, mid and side EQ. Very simply put, because sometimes you see an M and an S within the EQs, and sometimes you could think, oh, that's mono and stereo. No, it's not. Mid and side EQ. Mid is literally all the frequencies that are in the middle of a signal, and side is all of the rest that is actually happening on the side. So how that sounds, we can use the EQ8 from Ableton for this. Over here in mode, we can just go to MS, which is for mid and side EQ. And right now, it's just editing the mids. So let's hear how that sounds. I'm gonna click on the little headphone icon so we can hear what it's about. Let's switch this from M to S. So when it's on S, now we're gonna hear only the side frequencies. Essentially, it's your stereo image, right? And that's basically mid and side EQ unraveled. So now you could dive into your stereo image. Maybe it's the leads, maybe it's vocals, maybe it's on your master. And you can hear out for all the side signals and EQ out the sides without it affecting the middle of the signal. So that's interesting. Kind of like playing around with the stereo image as well. The Pro Q3 definitely took this to another level. Say I'm over here, I have this little peak. Now I can actually dive into the settings, and over here under stereo placement, we could choose. Maybe you want to EQ all the left signal or all the right signal, only the mids or only the sides. So same kind of story. I'm just hitting this little headphone button. Stereo image, right? And I could EQ this without affecting the mid signal. And I actually love it that they have a left and right function here as well. So the right signal. And obviously the left. And it gets so flexible. And what I often do is I will just add stereo image by just EQing a little bit more left, say here, and maybe a little bit more right here. And this is basically a stereo widening tactic as well. What if you would make these dynamic? And now you understand how flexible you can get with all of these tips and tricks. And speaking of tips and tricks, it is the bonus trick that I've been promising you, and it's very short, but it's amazing. Okay, say you're EQing, and often when you're EQing, you're pushing up a frequency and it sounds amazing, right? Oh yeah, this right here. Oh, just a ton of bass. The thing is, oftentimes it sounds good because you're bumping up the volume. Obviously, I'm going crazy right here. It's a plus 9 dB in the 90 Hertz range. But what if you EQ and the volume would still stay the same? So you get a more realistic image of what you're actually EQing, and if it makes sense, you're EQing in that frequency. And in the Pro Q3, there's an amazing setting for that. And it's this little A. A stands for auto gain, which means that if I bump this a 9 dBs up, it'll compensate in the rest of the track and essentially pull the track down a little bit so you can actually hear what you're actually doing. So let's do that again now with the auto gain on, right? So now the effect is more minimal, but once you skim over the track and you'll hear a real difference in certain frequencies, then it's safe to say you're onto something, and it's actually a good thing you're EQing there. Auto gain guaranteed to actually make your sounds and vocals and track sound fatter. There you have it, advanced EQing. Hope you got something out of it. Hope you can use these tips and tricks in your next level productions from here on. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit me with a like as well. Make sure to get me in that YouTube algorithm. And if you have any EQ tips and tricks, make sure to leave it in the comments below as well. It's much appreciated. All right, I was Laidback Luke. I'll catch you back here for the next one. Until then, L's up.